3 days after Evelyn Carter uncovered the truth about the Ashborne estate, something subtle began to happen. At first, she couldn't explain it. A small detail in a conversation she swore happened didn't match anymore. A hallway she walked through every morning suddenly felt slightly different. Pause. She told herself it was stress, exhaustion, maybe even fear playing tricks on her mind. But deep down, she already knew. Something was changing her memory. And in a place like the Ashborne estate, nothing changes without permission. Damien noticed it before she did. He watched her carefully now, more than before. Not with affection, but with hesitation. Like someone watching a system they don't fully understand anymore. One night, Evelyn finally confronted him. Her voice was steady, but tight. "Something is happening here, and I need you to tell me what it is." Damien didn't answer immediately. He just looked at her, long and silent. Then he said something she didn't expect. Slight pause. "Stop tracking it." Evelyn blinked. He continued, quieter now. "The moment you start noticing the pattern starts noticing you back." Soft inhale, pause. That line stayed in the room longer than he did. Later that week, Claire Holloway appeared again, always at the wrong time. Or maybe the right time. She never rushed, never raised her voice. Just calm, precise, controlled. "You're experiencing adjustment sensitivity," she said softly. Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "Adjustment to what?" Claire smiled faintly. "Not warm, not cold, just knowing. To stability systems designed for environments like this." Pause, soft tension built. Evelyn didn't respond. But inside something shifted. Because Claire never sounded like she was guessing. She sounded like she was confirming something already decided. Then came Marcus Reed. Quiet as always. Almost invisible in the way he moved through the estate. But this time, he left something behind. A small key. No explanation. No warning. Just placed where only someone paying attention would find it. Evelyn followed it. Down. Far below the estate. Where silence felt heavier, almost engineered. And that's where she saw it. Monitors. Files. Systems running quietly in the dark. And one name. Repeated across everything. Slight pause. The Concord Initiative. Evelyn whispered it under her breath. "What is this place?" No answer came. Because the room itself didn't answer questions. It recorded them. And then she saw it. Her own name. On a file marked. Selection candidate. Behavioral compatibility. High. Pause. Very soft emphasis. Years before she ever met Damien. A cold realization settled in. This wasn't discovery. It was confirmation. Claire's voice echoed later that night. Almost casually. "I was like you once," she said. Evelyn turned slowly. Claire continued. "Confused. Resistant. Certain I didn't belong here." A faint pause. Then a soft exhale, almost like a laugh. "But eventually, I understood." Evelyn stared at her. Understood what? Claire's eyes didn't move. That not everything outside this system is freedom. Long pause. That silence hit harder than anything else. Then came the footage. Damien. Not as she knew him, but as something shaped, measured, documented. A life built inside structure. Not chaos. Not neglect. But control. Carefully designed control. Evelyn stepped back slightly. A quiet breath escaped her. "So this is what you are," she whispered. And then it happened. A subtle shift in the estate. The feeling that something had changed. Not outside. Inside. Like the house itself had noticed she understood too much. Damien stopped speaking to her the same way after that. Claire became more present. Marcus became quieter. And Vivian became unavoidable. When Evelyn finally stood before Vivian Ashborne, the air felt heavier than before. Vivian didn't move much. She didn't need to. "You're asking the wrong question," she said calmly. Evelyn frowned. Vivian continued. "This is not about control." A slight pause. "It's about stability." Evelyn's voice sharpened. "And what happens to people who refuse it?" Vivian looked at her for a long moment, then answered simply. "They stop becoming a risk." Silence. That night, everything changed again. A message appeared on Evelyn's device. No sender. No trace. Just coordinates. And a single line. "Concord Facility 7 remains active." Evelyn stared at it. Long, silent, unmoving. Then she whispered something barely audible. So it never ended. And somewhere in the distance of the estate, something quietly acknowledged her realization. Because now, she wasn't just inside the system. Pause. She was being evaluated by it. Evelyn didn't sleep that night. Not really. She sat in silence, staring at the coordinates on her screen, replaying Vivian's words over and over again. They stopped becoming a risk. Pause. That sentence didn't feel like a warning anymore. It felt like a definition. The next morning, everything inside the estate felt slightly different again. Not visibly, but perceptibly, like the environment had adjusted to her awareness. Evelyn noticed it immediately. The staff spoke less around her. Corridors that used to feel open now felt monitored. And Damien wouldn't meet her eyes. Not once. When she finally approached him, he was standing alone in the study. Still, quiet, like someone waiting for something inevitable. Evelyn stepped closer. "Tell me what Facility 7 is." A long silence. Damien exhaled slowly. And for the first time, his voice wasn't controlled. It was tired. "You weren't supposed to see that." Soft pause. Evelyn didn't move. "I didn't ask what I was supposed to see. I asked what it is." Damien finally turned toward her. And what she saw in his eyes wasn't denial. It was resignation. "It's not a place," he said quietly. "It's a continuation." Evelyn frowned slightly. A continuation of what? Damien hesitated, then answered. "Of correction." Pause. The word hung in the air too long. Correction. Not punishment. Not justice. Correction. That night, Marcus Reed finally met her alone. No surveillance routes. No guards nearby. Just him and silence. He placed a small encrypted drive on the table. "This wasn't meant for you," he said quietly. Evelyn stared at it. "Then why am I getting it?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Then, "Because the system doesn't always agree with itself." That was the first time Evelyn felt something shift inside the structure. Not fear. Not confusion. Something closer to opportunity. She played the drive, and what she saw changed everything. Files. Not just of Damien, but of dozens of people. Politicians. Heirs. Executives. Family members who had all passed through similar evaluations. All labeled the same way. Stabilized. Integrated. Reassigned. Evelyn whispered under her breath. "This is everywhere." Marcus's voice came softly from behind her. "It's older than the estate." Pause. "Much older." Evelyn turned slowly. "Then who built it?" Marcus hesitated. That hesitation said everything. People who believe chaos always leads to collapse. A long silence followed. The kind that doesn't end, it just changes shape. Then Evelyn said something she didn't fully understand yet. "If they believe they're saving people, why hide it?" Marcus looked at her, and for the first time, his expression softened slightly. "Because saving people and controlling them start to look the same when you do it long enough." That night, Evelyn didn't return to her room immediately. She walked the halls alone, listening, observing, counting, and the more she paid attention, the more the estate revealed itself differently. Doors that weren't used. Mirrors that reflected slightly delayed movements. Staff who paused before responding to her presence. It wasn't just a house. It was a system reacting in real time. And then she saw it. A door she had never noticed before. Half hidden behind a decorative wall panel. Unmarked. Unacknowledged. Waiting. Evelyn placed her hand on the handle. And for a brief moment, everything inside the estate went silent. Not physically, but perceptually. Like the system itself was holding its breath. She opened the door. And what she saw inside was not another room. It was infrastructure. Monitors. Maps. Live feeds. And a central screen displaying one word. Evelyn Carter. Active evaluation phase. Her breath stopped. Just for a second. Then, a soft voice came from behind her. Calm. Familiar. Controlled. "You're progressing faster than expected." Evelyn turned slowly. Claire stood there, watching, smiling faintly. And in that moment, Evelyn finally understood. She was no longer investigating the system. She was inside its response cycle. And somewhere deep within the estate, something new began to activate. Claire didn't move closer. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough to change the atmosphere of the room. Evelyn stood frozen, staring at the central screen still glowing behind her. Active evaluation phase. The words didn't feel like information anymore. They felt like confirmation. Evelyn slowly turned her head back toward Claire. Her voice was low. "You knew this was here." Claire didn't deny it. She never did. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if studying Evelyn's reaction. "I knew you would find it." Pause. That answer hit differently. Not like a confession. Like expectation. Evelyn stepped forward slightly. Then tell me what I am. A long silence. Claire's expression softened, but only slightly. That depends on how you respond now. A faint hum echoed through the room. Not loud, not obvious, but present, like the building itself had begun to wake up. Marcus appeared at the doorway moments later, breathing steady, eyes alert, and for the first time, he looked concerned. They've noticed the access breach, he said quietly. Evelyn turned toward him. Who is they? Marcus hesitated. Then, the monitoring layer above this facility. Claire finally spoke again. Calm, measured. They don't react emotionally, she said. They recalibrate. Evelyn frowned. Recalibrate what? Claire looked at her directly now. Behavioral deviation. Pause. For a moment, everything felt still again. Too still. Even the air felt structured. Then the lights dimmed slightly. Not a blackout. A correction. Marcus moved closer to Evelyn. We need to leave this room. Now. But Evelyn didn't move. Because her eyes were locked on the screen. Something had changed. New text was appearing. Slowly. Systematically. Subject awareness threshold exceeded. Initiating containment response review. Evelyn whispered it under her breath. Containment. Claire's voice came gently behind her. It sounds worse than it is. Evelyn turned sharply. Does it? Claire paused. For the first time, there was something unreadable in her expression. Not emotion, but memory. It means the system adjusts its approach, Claire said, to maintain stability. Evelyn shook her head slightly. That's not stability. That's control. A soft, almost inaudible chuckle left Claire. Not mocking, not warm, just reflective. You're starting to understand the language, she said. And that was the moment Evelyn realized something unsettling. Claire wasn't defending the system. She was explaining it, like someone who had once resisted it and stopped. A sharp alert tone echoed briefly through the facility, then stopped immediately, like it had been tested and approved. Marcus grabbed Evelyn's arm. We're leaving. Now. This time she moved. They ran through the corridor. But something was different. The hallway wasn't empty anymore. Subtle changes. Doors now slightly open that were previously closed. Lights shifting as they passed. The estate was reacting. Evelyn's breathing grew heavier. Marcus, what is it doing? Marcus didn't look back. It's mapping you in real time. Evelyn stopped for half a second. Mapping me? Marcus nodded once. Your decisions. Your hesitation. Your emotional response. Another pause. Everything. That realization landed deeper than fear. Because it meant there was no silence here. Not even inside her own mind. They reached the lower corridor access point. Marcus keyed in a sequence. A hidden door opened slowly. Cold air rushed out. Below them was darkness. But structured darkness. Not empty space. Designed space. Evelyn stared down. This leads where? Marcus looked at her. And for the first time, his answer was direct. Facility 7. A long silence followed. Then Evelyn whispered. So this is how it ends. Marcus shook his head slightly. No. Pause. This is where it begins to decide what you become. Behind them, footsteps echoed faintly. Not running. Not rushing. Just approaching. Controlled. Measured. Claire's voice came softly from the corridor behind them. You don't have to run, Evelyn. Evelyn turned slowly. Claire stood at the far end of the hallway. Calm. Still. Watching. We can slow this down, Claire said gently. If you cooperate. Evelyn stared at her. Cooperate with what? Claire's answer came after a pause. With understanding the system before it understands you fully. Marcus pulled Evelyn toward the stairwell. Don't listen to her. But Evelyn didn't look away from Claire. Because something about Claire's tone wasn't persuasive. It was experienced. Evelyn stepped backward slowly into the stairwell. Still watching Claire. Are you saying I can stop this? Claire didn't answer immediately. Then, no. A pause. But you can choose your role inside it. That was the last thing Evelyn heard before Marcus pulled her down into the darkness below. The door sealed above them. And the estate went quiet again. But not still. Never still. Because deep inside the system, something had already changed its classification of her. From observer to active variable. And Facility 7 was now fully awake. The stairwell stretched deeper than Evelyn expected. Too deep. Not like a basement. More like a deliberate descent into something that had been waiting beneath everything else. Each step echoed softly at first, then became absorbed by the structure itself, as if even sound was being measured. Marcus stayed slightly ahead of her. Silent. focused. But Evelyn could sense it now. Even he was different here. More alert. More restrained. Like this place required a different version of him. Finally, they reached the bottom. A heavy door stood in front of them. No handle. Only a panel. Marcus pressed a sequence. A pause. Then the door opened. Cold white light poured out. Clean. Clinical. Almost calm. Evelyn stepped inside slowly. And immediately stopped. It wasn't what she expected. No chaos. No prison. No fear-filled environment. Instead, order. Rows of glass partitions. Soft ambient lighting. Monitors displaying live data. And quiet corridors stretching in multiple directions like a controlled grid. Evelyn whispered, "This is not what I thought it would be." Marcus nodded slightly. "That's intentional." A faint hum filled the space. Not mechanical noise. Something closer to environmental balance. Like the room itself was designed to keep emotions stable. Evelyn looked around. "Where are the people?" Marcus hesitated, then answered quietly, "Not here anymore." A long silence followed. Then a voice came from above the control room speakers. Calm. Familiar. "Vivian Ashborne. You made it further than expected." Evelyn froze. Marcus didn't react, which meant he already knew she would be here. Evelyn looked up. "Vivian." Her voice was controlled now, but sharpened. "This ends now." A soft pause from the speaker. Then Vivian replied, "It already has ended." Evelyn frowned. "What does that mean?" Vivian's voice remained steady. "You are standing inside the final stage of integration architecture." Evelyn shook her head slightly. "No, I'm standing inside a room you built to control people." A faint silence. Then Vivian responded, "Those are not different things." That line landed differently, heavier than intended. Marcus finally spoke. "Evelyn, look at the monitors." She turned, and what she saw made her stop breathing for a moment. Her name. Everywhere. Status updates. Behavior tracking. Emotional response mapping. Decision prediction models. And at the center, subject, Carter, Evelyn. Classification, high adaptive variant. Evelyn stepped back slightly. Variant. Vivian's voice returned. Some individuals resist correction. A pause. Others adapt too quickly. Evelyn looked up. "And what am I?" A long silence. Then Vivian answered. "Rare." Marcus exhaled slowly beside her. Not relief. Not fear. Something in between. Evelyn turned toward him. "You knew?" Marcus didn't deny it. "I suspected." Evelyn's voice tightened. "Since when?" Marcus hesitated. "Then. Since you didn't break the first time the system adjusted you." A quiet pause. Evelyn stared at him. "Adjusted me?" Marcus nodded slightly. Memory drift. Emotional recalibration. Environmental response shaping. A pause. "You've been inside the system longer than you think." Evelyn stepped back again. Slowly. Processing. Refusing. Then Vivian spoke again. "This is where most subjects understand the truth." Evelyn looked up. "And what truth is that?" Vivian answered without hesitation. "That freedom is not the absence of structure." A pause. "It is the acceptance of it." Evelyn shook her head slightly. "No." Her voice rose now. "That's not freedom. That's rewriting people until they stop resisting." A soft silence followed. Then Vivian said something different. Quieter. Almost personal. "Resistance is not removed here." A pause. "It is redirected." Evelyn frowned. "What does that even mean?" Marcus stepped closer to her. His voice low. "It means the system doesn't destroy opposition." He paused. "It integrates it." A new alert tone echoed through the facility. This one deeper. Finalized. Marcus looked up sharply. "They've activated full review protocol." Evelyn turned. "What happens during review?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Then, "Everything about you is evaluated at once." Evelyn's breath slowed. "And if I fail?" A silence. Then Marcus answered honestly. "You don't fail." A pause. "You're reassigned." The lights in the facility shifted slightly. Not darker. More precise. Vivian's voice returned one last time. "You are not here by accident, Evelyn." A pause. "You are here because the system is incomplete without understanding you." Evelyn stood still. For the first time. Not resisting. Not running. Just listening. Then she said quietly, "And if I refuse?" A long silence from Vivian. Long enough to feel intentional. Then she replied, "Then you will teach us something new." A soft mechanical hum spread through the facility. Not threatening. Not violent. Just activation. Marcus grabbed Evelyn's arm. "We need to move. Now." But Evelyn didn't move immediately. Her eyes stayed on the central monitors, watching her own classification evolve in real time. From variable to active system influence risk. Evelyn whispered, "It's changing me as I stand here." Marcus nodded once. "That's what it does." They turned toward the deeper corridor and began moving. But behind them, the system was no longer observing quietly. It was responding fully. Because Facility 7 had reached a conclusion, Evelyn Carter was no longer just a subject. She was becoming a decision point, and whatever she chose next would not only affect her escape, it would determine what the system becomes next. Evelyn and Marcus moved deeper into Facility 7. The corridor ahead was longer than it should have been. Not physically impossible, just deliberately extended, like the space was designed to slow down decisions. Evelyn's breathing was steady now, but her mind wasn't. Every step felt like it was being recorded somewhere she couldn't see. Marcus finally slowed his pace. Something had changed in him. Evelyn noticed immediately. "You knew this place wasn't just an archive," she said quietly. Marcus didn't answer right away. Then, "I knew it was adaptive." A pause. "Not static." Evelyn frowned. "Adaptive to what?" Marcus looked at her. "To people like you." That sentence lingered in the air, too precise to ignore. Ahead, the corridor opened into a wide circular control chamber. And inside it, everything stopped. Monitors lined the walls. Multiple live feeds of the estate above. Behavioral data streams. Emotional response graphs. Decision prediction models. All converging toward one central point. And standing at the center of the room, Vivian Ashborne. She didn't turn immediately. She didn't need to. She already knew Evelyn had arrived. "You came further than most," Vivian said calmly. Her voice echoed softly across the chamber. Controlled. Measured. Certain. Evelyn stepped forward. "No more games," she said. "This ends now." Vivian finally turned. Her expression wasn't hostile. It wasn't emotional either. It was observational. Like someone studying a result they had been waiting years to see. "This isn't a game," Vivian replied. A pause. "It never was." Evelyn shook her head slightly. "Then what is it?" Vivian walked slowly toward the center console. Every step deliberate. Calm. "Incomplete architecture," she said. "That reacts to instability in human systems." Evelyn's voice sharpened. "You mean people?" Vivian didn't deny it. "Yes." A long silence followed. Then Marcus stepped forward slightly. His voice was low. "This is where final classification happens." Evelyn turned to him. "Final classification?" Marcus nodded once. "Every subject reaches a threshold." A pause. "And then the system decides what they become." Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. "What they become?" Vivian answered before Marcus could. "Integrated." A pause. "Or removed from influence." That word again. Removed. Not destroyed. Not punished. Just eliminated from impact. Evelyn took a slow step back. "So that's it." Her voice lowered. "People either comply or disappear." Vivian tilted her head slightly. "That is an emotional interpretation." A pause. "This is structural maintenance." Evelyn let out a soft, disbelieving breath. Almost a laugh. But not amusement. Shock. "You've reduced human life to maintenance terms." Vivian didn't react. "That is what stability requires." A sudden alert tone filled the chamber. Deeper than before. Final stage protocol initiating. Marcus looked up sharply. "It's locking the chamber." Evelyn turned. "What does that mean?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Then quietly. "No one enters or leaves until final decision output is complete." Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. "Decision output?" Vivian spoke again. Calm. "Final. You are now the variable that determines system recalibration." Evelyn froze. "Me?" Vivian nodded once. "Your behavior has already influenced multiple system pathways." A pause. "The only remaining question is direction." Evelyn shook her head. "This is insane." Vivian stepped closer. "No." A pause. "It is structured." The monitors around them began shifting. Rapid recalculation. Real-time modeling. Marcus stepped beside Evelyn. Quietly. "This is what Facility 7 does," he said. "It doesn't punish." A pause. "It decides outcomes based on adaptation patterns." Evelyn whispered. "And what if I don't adapt?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then answered honestly. "Then the system adapts without you." A heavy silence followed. Vivian finally stopped at the central console. She placed her hand on it and spoke one final time. "You were selected because you resist prediction." A pause. That is rare. Evelyn's voice softened slightly. So what am I supposed to do? Vivian looked at her directly now. For the first time. A pause. Choose. The chamber lights dimmed slightly. Focus narrowed. Everything centered on Evelyn. Marcus stepped back slowly, not abandoning her, giving space. And Evelyn realized something in that moment. There was no physical escape being tested anymore. Only a decision. Vivian's voice lowered. If you choose rejection. A pause. Facility 7 collapses its current structure. Evelyn frowned. And if I accept? Vivian answered simply. Then you become part of its next iteration. A long silence. Evelyn looked at Marcus, then at Vivian, then at the glowing system maps surrounding her. And for the first time, she understood the real weight of the system. It wasn't asking her to survive it. It was asking her to define it. Evelyn whispered. And Damien? A pause. Vivian answered softly. He already chose. Evelyn froze. What did he choose? Vivian didn't answer immediately. Then, to remain within structure. A quiet breath escaped Evelyn. Not fear. Not anger. Something heavier. Acceptance. Understanding. Marcus stepped closer again. Evelyn, whatever you choose now, it changes everything. The chamber fell silent. Fully silent. Waiting. And in that silence, Evelyn Carter made her decision. But before she spoke, the system began recording at maximum resolution. Because this moment was no longer just observation. It was evolution. The room went completely still. Not quiet in the usual sense, but controlled stillness. Like the entire facility was holding its attention on a single point in space. Evelyn Carter. She could feel it now. Not just the monitors, not just the systems, but the weight of observation itself. Every second she delayed felt accounted for. Vivian stood calmly at the central console, waiting, not impatient, not emotional, just certain this moment would arrive eventually. Marcus stepped slightly closer to Evelyn. His voice was low. This isn't just about you anymore. A pause. It never was. Evelyn didn't look away from Vivian. Then what is it about? A long silence followed. Then Vivian answered. Stability at scale. Evelyn's expression tightened. That's not stability. That's control dressed as logic. Vivian didn't react immediately. Then, control is an emotional interpretation. A pause. Structure is the reality. A faint alarm pulse echoed through the chamber. Soft. Rhythmic. Like a heartbeat syncing with the system. Marcus exhaled slowly. They're ready for your decision output. Evelyn frowned slightly. Output. She repeated the word quietly. Like I'm a calculation. Vivian nodded once. In this environment. A pause. All variables are processed. Evelyn stepped forward. Slowly. Now directly facing Vivian. No, she said quietly. I'm not a variable. A brief silence. Even the system seemed to hesitate. Vivian tilted her head slightly. You are the most important variable in this cycle. Evelyn shook her head. That's the problem. She turned slightly, looking at the entire chamber. The screens. The maps. The constant live evaluation streams. Her voice lowered. You've built a system that watches people long enough until it forgets they were ever human. A pause. Marcus looked down slightly. Not disagreeing. Not agreeing. Just understanding the weight of it. Vivian finally spoke again. Then you understand the decision in front of you. Evelyn turned back. Slowly. No. A pause. I understand what you've done. Silence again. Heavier this time. Vivian stepped away from the console slightly. For the first time, she said calmly. You are not reacting. Evelyn met her eyes. I'm thinking. A faint pause. Then Vivian replied. That is why you are dangerous to the system. Evelyn blinked slowly. Dangerous? Marcus spoke quietly beside her. She means unpredictable. Evelyn let out a soft breath. Almost a laugh. But not humor. Recognition. So that's it, she whispered. If I don't fit your prediction models, I become a threat. Vivian didn't deny it. Yes. A long silence followed. Then Evelyn asked the question that had been building since the beginning. What happened to the others who reached this point? The chamber lights dimmed slightly. Not dramatically, but intentionally. Marcus answered instead of Vivian. They were integrated. A pause. Or reassigned. Evelyn turned slightly toward him. And Damien? Marcus hesitated. Then, he stopped resisting early. That answer landed differently. He didn't fail. He complied. Evelyn looked down for a moment. Processing. Then she whispered. So he chose survival over truth. Marcus didn't respond. Because that wasn't entirely wrong. Vivian's voice returned. Come again. This is not survival versus truth. A pause. It is adaptation versus instability. Evelyn slowly raised her head. And what am I supposed to choose? A silence followed. Longer than before. Even the system felt it. Then Vivian answered. You choose whether you remain an unpredictable element. A pause. Or become part of the structure that reduces unpredictability. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. Just for a second. When she opened them again, something had changed. Not in the room. In her. Her voice was quieter now. Controlled. But if I become part of your system. A pause. Then I stop being myself. Vivian responded softly. You evolve. Evelyn shook her head. No. A pause. That's not evolution. She stepped forward again. Closer to the console. Closer to the decision point. If evolution requires losing who you are. Her voice tightened slightly. Then it's not evolution. A long silence followed. Marcus stepped back slowly. He understood what was happening. This was no longer negotiation. This was final divergence. Vivian watched Evelyn carefully now. For the first time, less certain. Because Evelyn wasn't breaking. She wasn't complying. And she wasn't rejecting emotionally. She was deciding. Evelyn looked at the central system display. Her classification still glowing. Still updating. Still waiting. And then she said it. Quietly. Clearly. I reject integration. A pause so heavy it felt physical. The system responded instantly. But not loudly. Not violently. Just a single phrase appeared across every screen. Variable declined structural resolution path. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. Not relief. Not fear. Something in between. Vivian didn't move. She simply observed Evelyn. Like someone watching the first true anomaly they had ever encountered. And then Vivian said something unexpected. Softly. Almost respectfully. Then the system will learn from you. Evelyn's expression tightened slightly. What does that mean? Marcus stepped closer quickly. That's not normal output. The lights in the chamber began shifting. Slowly. Not collapsing. Reconfiguring. Vivian looked at the system console. Then back at Evelyn. You are no longer just a subject. A pause. You are now a reference point. Evelyn's breath slowed. A reference point for what? Vivian answered. For what cannot be integrated. A long silence followed. And somewhere deep within Facility 7, something changed permanently. Not shutdown. Not activation. Recalibration. Because Evelyn Carter did something the system had not fully accounted for. She refused without breaking. And that was not part of the design. The chamber didn't explode. It didn't shut down. It didn't collapse. It simply changed state. Like a machine that had just accepted a new input it didn't fully understand yet. Evelyn stood still, waiting for resistance, waiting for consequences. But none came immediately. Only silence. Controlled silence. Marcus broke it first. It didn't execute containment. He sounded confused. Not relieved. Not calm. Confused. Evelyn looked at him. What does that mean? Marcus hesitated. Then quietly. It means the system didn't classify your rejection as failure. A pause. It classified it as data. That word lingered. Data. Not defiance. Not rebellion. Just information. Vivian stepped away from the console. Slowly. For the first time, her composure wasn't absolute. There was something different in her eyes now. Not fear. But recalculation. You were not supposed to reach this state, Vivian said quietly. Evelyn responded immediately. But I did. A pause. Vivian nodded slightly. Yes. Just that. No correction. No resistance. Just acceptance of fact. The system screens around them began shifting again. Not faster. Not louder. More refined. Marcus stepped closer to Evelyn. His voice dropped. This is where it gets unpredictable. Evelyn frowned. What does? Marcus looked at the screens. The response model. A soft tone echoed through the chamber. Then a new message appeared. Subject Carter. Unclassified outcome detected. Evelyn stared at it. Unclassified. Marcus shook his head slightly. That's not supposed to exist. Vivian finally spoke again. Calm. But different now. Every system has limits. A pause. You are exposing one. Evelyn's expression tightened. I didn't come here to expose anything. Vivian nodded once. I know. A pause. But you did anyway. Silence spread through the chamber again. But this time, it wasn't controlled. It was uncertain. For the first time, the system didn't immediately respond to her presence. It paused, evaluated, recalculated. Evelyn noticed it. "So what happens now?" she asked quietly. Marcus answered before Vivian could. "We wait." Evelyn turned to him. "For what?" Marcus looked at her. "For the system to decide what you are." A long silence followed. Then Vivian said something unexpected. Softly, almost carefully. "It is no longer just deciding what you are." A pause. "It is deciding what it will become because of you." Evelyn blinked slowly. "That's not how systems work." Vivian replied without hesitation. "It is now." The chamber lights dimmed slightly again. Not alarm. Not failure. Transition. Marcus stepped back slowly. "This is new architecture behavior," he said quietly. "They're adapting in real time." Evelyn frowned. "Because of me?" Marcus nodded. "Yes." A pause. "You broke the expected response curve." Evelyn let out a small breath. Almost disbelief. "I didn't break anything." Vivian looked directly at her. "You interrupted prediction." A silence followed. Then Vivian walked back toward the console. But she didn't resume control. She just stood beside it, watching it, like it was no longer hers alone. Evelyn spoke again. "If I'm a reference point now." A pause. "What does that mean for Damien?" That question changed the atmosphere instantly. Marcus looked down. Vivian didn't respond immediately, and the system paused longer than before. Then Vivian finally said, "Damien is no longer classified as independent." Evelyn frowned. "What does that mean?" Marcus answered quietly. "It means he is part of the structure that evaluates you." Evelyn froze. "He's part of it." A long silence followed. Then Marcus continued. "He didn't just choose the system." A pause. "He was reassigned into it." Evelyn's breath slowed. "Reassigned." Vivian spoke again. Calm. Final. "Every stable system requires internal moderation." A pause. "He is one of them." Evelyn shook her head slightly. "That's not him." Vivian responded instantly. "That is what he has become." Silence again. Heavy. Final. Evelyn looked down for a moment, processing everything. Not breaking. Not reacting. Just absorbing. Then she whispered, "So this was never about escaping." Marcus looked at her. "No." Evelyn continued. "It was about classification." Marcus didn't deny it. Vivian nodded once. "Yes." A pause. Evelyn lifted her head again, slowly, and something in her expression shifted. Not fear. Not confusion. Clarity. "Then classify this," she said quietly. The system immediately registered a tension spike. All monitors stabilized. Waiting. Marcus looked at her. "Evelyn." But she didn't stop. "I am not your variable." A pause. "I am not your correction." Another pause. "And I am not your evolution trigger." The system began recalibrating faster. Vivian stepped forward slightly. For the first time, urgency entered her voice. Evelyn stopped speaking. But Evelyn continued anyway. Calm. Certain. "I am the point where your system stops making sense." A deep system tone echoed. Low. Sustained. Marcus stepped back again. "It's destabilizing interpretation layers." Evelyn turned slightly toward him. "And that means?" Marcus answered quietly. "It means it doesn't know how to categorize what you just said." A silence followed. Then Vivian spoke softly, almost to herself. "This has never happened before." Evelyn looked at her. "Then maybe it's time it did." And in that moment, the system stopped updating. Not frozen, not crashed, just paused. Like it was waiting for something it had never been programmed to anticipate. And Evelyn Carter stood at the center of it. Not as a subject, not as a variable, not even as a reference point anymore, but as something the system had no language left for. And that was where everything changed. The silence inside Facility 7 didn't feel empty anymore. It felt paused, like something massive was holding its breath across every connected layer of the system. Evelyn remained still, not because she was afraid, but because she could feel it now. The system wasn't reacting quickly anymore. It was thinking. Marcus spoke first, quietly. "This isn't normal response behavior." A pause. "It's deliberation." Evelyn turned slightly toward him. "Machines don't deliberate." Marcus shook his head. "This one is." Vivian stood near the central console, unmoving. But her eyes were no longer fully calm. Something had shifted in her posture. Subtle, but real. Evelyn took a slow step forward. If it doesn't know what I am. A pause. Then what is it going to do? A long silence followed. Even the system didn't answer immediately. Then, a new message appeared across all monitors. Not loud, not urgent, just precise. Unresolvable subject classification detected. Marcus exhaled slowly. That's the highest ambiguity state possible. Evelyn frowned. Ambiguity? Marcus nodded. It means the system can't place you anywhere in its structure. A pause. That should not happen. Vivian finally spoke again. Softly, carefully. It means you are outside defined behavioral architecture. Evelyn looked at her. So what now? Vivian hesitated. Just for a moment. Then, we expand the architecture. Evelyn blinked. You what? Vivian turned slightly toward the console, as if speaking to it more than to Evelyn now. When a system encounters a pattern it cannot classify, a pause, it evolves to include it. Marcus looked at Evelyn immediately. No, a pause. That's not evolution. That's assimilation. Evelyn's expression tightened slightly. And I'm supposed to just accept that? Vivian answered calmly. You are not being forced. A pause. You are being observed in real time. A faint hum spread through the chamber again. Deeper this time. Wider. Like multiple systems syncing at once. Evelyn looked around. The estate is connected to this. Marcus nodded once. Everything is. A long silence followed. Then Evelyn asked quietly. And Damien? The question changed the energy instantly again. Marcus looked down. Vivian didn't answer immediately. The system itself paused longer than before. Then Vivian said, he is watching this process. Evelyn froze. From where? A new screen flickered on. Not a file. Not a report. A live feed. Damien Ashborne. Sitting in another control space. Expression unreadable. But eyes fixed. Watching her. Evelyn stepped back slightly. He's part of this moment. Marcus nodded slowly. Yes. A pause. He always is. Evelyn's voice dropped. So everything I say, Marcus finished the sentence, is being evaluated through him. Silence again. Then Damien finally spoke through the system feed. His voice calm, controlled, but different from before. More distant. Evelyn. A pause. You are not breaking the system. Evelyn stared at the screen. Then what am I doing? Damien hesitated. Just slightly. Then, you are revealing its edges. A quiet pause followed. Evelyn's eyes narrowed slightly. Edges. Damien continued. Every system believes it is complete. A pause. But no system is. Marcus stepped closer to Evelyn again. Don't trust this framing, he whispered. But Evelyn didn't look away. She was listening. Not emotionally. Analytically. Damien continued. And when something appears that does not fit, a pause. The system must decide whether to expand or reject itself. Evelyn frowned. So I'm forcing it to change. Damien answered. Yes. A long silence followed. Vivian finally spoke again. Calm, but now more restrained. This was never the expected outcome. Evelyn turned to her. Then what was? Vivian answered honestly. Integration. A pause. Or containment. Evelyn let out a small breath. And instead, Vivian looked at her directly. You became an undefined influence. The monitors flickered again. Slower now. Almost hesitant. Marcus whispered. It's trying to stabilize the interpretation layer. Evelyn looked at him. And failing. Marcus nodded. Yes. A pause. It keeps resetting classification attempts. Evelyn turned back toward Vivian. So what happens when it can't decide anymore? A long silence followed. Then Vivian said something quieter than everything before. It creates a new category. Evelyn frowned. For me? Vivian nodded. For what you represent. The system tone deepened again. But not as warning. As transition. Damien's voice returned through the feed. Lower now. Almost reflective. If you become that category. A pause. Then everything built before you is no longer final. Evelyn stared at him. And you're okay with that? A silence. Then Damien answered. I don't know yet. That honesty landed differently. Not as weakness, but as uncertainty inside a controlled system. Evelyn looked down slightly, processing everything. Then she said softly, so the system isn't collapsing. A pause. It's hesitating. Marcus nodded. For the first time. Vivian exhaled slowly. Yes. A long silence followed. Not empty, not calm, but unresolved. And somewhere deep inside Facility 7, something new began to form. Not a shutdown, not an override, a rewrite. Because Evelyn Carter was no longer being evaluated as an individual. She was becoming the reason evaluation itself had to change. The silence inside Facility 7 did not break. It evolved. The monitors no longer flickered randomly. They synchronized. Slowly at first, then with certainty. As if the system had finally reached a decision it could execute. Evelyn stood still, watching it happen. Not afraid anymore. Just aware. Marcus stepped closer to her, his voice low. It's committing to a new structural model. Evelyn didn't look away from the screens. And what does that mean? Marcus hesitated, then answered quietly. It means you were never going to be contained. A pause. You were going to be integrated differently. Evelyn frowned slightly. Differently how? Before Marcus could answer, Vivian spoke. But her voice no longer came from a single point in the room. It came from everywhere. Not louder. Just distributed. Evelyn Carter. A pause. You are no longer classified as a subject. Evelyn's expression tightened. Then what am I? A long silence followed. Even Damien's live feed stayed still. Watching. Waiting. Then Vivian answered. You are the first unresolved influence state. Marcus whispered under his breath. That's not supposed to exist. Evelyn turned slightly toward him. What does that mean in real terms? Marcus swallowed. It means the system can't close around you. A pause. And it can't remove you without rewriting itself. That sentence changed the air completely. Evelyn looked up again. So I'm inside it, but not controlled by it. Vivian responded immediately. You are inside it. A pause. But you are altering its boundaries. A soft mechanical tone echoed through the facility. Not an alarm. A confirmation signal. Damien's voice finally came through again. Lower than before. Different. Almost uncertain. This was not in the original model. Evelyn looked at the screen. What wasn't? Damien hesitated. You. A pause. That single word carried more weight than anything else so far. Evelyn stepped forward slightly. So what happens now? A long silence followed. This time, even Vivian didn't answer immediately. Then she finally said, the system expands. Marcus shook his head slightly. That's not expansion. A pause. That's mutation. Evelyn turned toward him. Into what? Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then answered honestly. No one knows yet. A deep tone filled the chamber again. Slower, more stable, but unfamiliar. The screens began shifting. Entire classification layers rewriting themselves in real time. New label appeared across the system. Category, Carter class event. Evelyn read it slowly. They named it after me. Vivian's voice returned. Come again, but different now. Less absolute. More observational. It is not naming. A pause. It is adaptation. Evelyn shook her head slightly. This is still control. Vivian replied softly. Control requires predictability. A pause. You are no longer predictable. Silence followed. Marcus stepped back slowly. This is bigger than containment now. Evelyn turned toward him. What is it then? Marcus hesitated, then said quietly. System redesign. A long pause followed. Then Damien spoke again. And this time his voice had changed. Less detached. More present. If the system changes around you. A pause. Then everything I am inside it changes too. Evelyn stared at him. Including you? Damien didn't answer immediately. Then, yes. That answer hit differently. Not emotional. Structural. Evelyn looked down slightly. Processing everything. Then she whispered. So I didn't escape anything. A pause. I redefined it. Marcus nodded slowly. That's what it looks like. Vivian's voice softened slightly. Almost imperceptibly. And that is why you cannot be removed. Evelyn looked up. So what happens to me now? A long silence followed. The system itself seemed to hesitate again. Then Vivian answered. You become the reference standard. Evelyn frowned. For what? Vivian replied simply. For future classification limits. A pause. Evelyn exhaled slowly. Almost disbelief. So I'm not inside the system anymore. A pause. I am the line it cannot cross. Silence. No correction came. Because for the first time, that statement was correct. Marcus spoke quietly. So what now? Evelyn looked around the chamber. At the shifting monitors. The evolving system. The uncertain structure trying to stabilize around her existence. Then she said softly. Now it learns. A deep system tone echoed across Facility 7. Not alarm. Not shutdown. Not activation. Acknowledgement. Damien's final voice came through the feed. Calm, but no longer distant. then this is no longer a system I control. A pause. Or understand. Evelyn met the screen. No. A pause. It never was. Silence followed. Long. Final. Complete. And then, the system stabilized. Not into what it was. Not into what it should be. But into something new. Something built around the existence of Evelyn Carter. Not as a subject. Not as a variable. Not even as a reference point. But as the boundary of what the system could become. And somewhere deep inside Facility 7, the definition of control changed forever. In the end, Facility 7 was never just about power, control, or hidden systems watching from the shadows. It was about something far more unsettling. The idea that when human behavior is studied long enough, it can be predicted, shaped, and even redirected. But Evelyn Carter's journey proved something the system could never fully calculate, that the human mind is not a fixed pattern. It adapts, resists, questions, and sometimes breaks the very logic built to contain it. What began as a controlled environment designed to eliminate unpredictability ended with the discovery that unpredictability is not a flaw. It is the essence of being human. The real lesson here is simple but powerful. Any system that tries to remove human freedom will eventually face the one variable it cannot fully control: choice. And in that moment of choice, everything changes. If you stayed until the end, thank you for being part of this journey. If this story made you think, feel, or question anything, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more deep, cinematic storytelling experiences like this.